Hi guys, I welcome you all to the next lecture in our anthropology series. So yesterday we were doing the Mendelian genetics. We had finished the Mendel's laws on inheritance, and today we are going to start with a you can say interesting topic, and this will give you more insights into what the genetics is all about and how differently we can use the genetics in today's modern day and age. Okay, so today we are going to precisely cover only three topics because even these are very long topics. So basically what we are going to read about is single factor, single factor, multi-factor and polygenic inheritance. Okay, inheritance. So now up till now you have understood the meaning of inheritance. That means whatever we take from our parents or inherit and acquire from our parents. And we have talked about briefly, we had already talked about what do you mean by chromosomes. That means you know that we have two kind of chromosomes. One is the autosomal and one is the sex chromosome, right? So we have 23 pairs of chromosomes in humans, and this total number of chromosomes or the pairs differ in different organisms. So we are not reading about any other organisms right now. So we are reading whatever we are reading, we are trying to contain ourselves to human species, right? So we have 23 pairs, and these can be broadly categorized into two: autosomal and sex chromosome. So sex chromosome ka there is only one, that is either it would be XX or XY, right? Right, and then autosomal mein all your 22 pairs of chromosomes. So when we talk about the inheritance of first 22 pairs of chromosomes, that means apart from the sex chromosomes, their inheritance, or you can say एक होता है male gender, एक होता है female gender, right? So whenever we talk about inheritance of these 22 autosomal pairs of chromosomes na, it is more or less same in both the genders. So कोई difference there as such नहीं होता. So इनका inheritance is similar in both the genders. But जो if there is anything which is inherited through the sex linked chromosome, ठीक है, उसका inheritance differs, ठीक है, and that is how the study we are going to मतलब in genetics we try to study this sex linked inheritance, how the it differs from in males and females, what changes it brings. So all of that, there are autosomal genetical disorders also, these are all the things, but majorly जो changes होते हैं वो sex linked में होते हैं, and that is one important part that we read. Okay, so now apart from that, हमने अभी तक बात करी थी, we were talking about the Mendelian genetics, right? Mendelian genetics, or you can say Mendel's laws on inheritance. What were the Mendel's laws in inheritance? One was the law of dominance. Then there was law of segregation. ठीक है, and there were laws of independent assortment and laws of paired alleles. Paired alleles मतलब whenever you see हर chromosome they'll be in two parts, right? So जब भी एक क्रोमोसोम होता है it is in pairs, ठीक है. जब ये it passes on from parent to the offspring, for example these are two parents, ठीक है. So इनके ये अभी ये diploid है, that means they are in two pairs of two, ठीक है. ये single out होते हैं and then they go to the child, ठीक है. and उसकी probability क्या रहती है, we have all studied. For example अगर if I have to show what I'm talking about, जैसे मैं आपको एक सिंपल एग्जांपल देती हूँ, एंड मोस्टली ऐसे ही रहता है. जैसे कि फॉर एग्जांपल व्हाट इज द चांस ऑफ इफ देयर इज अ मदर, एक्स एक्स इज द मदर. जस्ट वेट गाइज, आई लेट मी सी व्हाट इज हैपनिंग टू द स्क्रीन. Yeah, I hope it should be fine now. Yes, xx and xy, right? So if we talk about this is the mother and this is the father, ठीक है. So now if this now diploid groups कैसे break होगा, x में and x y में. So probability क्या है, what is the chances of their having a child would be either an xx, ठीक है, xy, xx and एक्स वाई, ठीक है। सो क्या किया हमने, जो पेयर्स में होते हैं उनको हमने सिंगल आउट करके देखा, ठीक है, एंड देन उसके बाद कितने कॉम्बिनेशंस, पॉसिबल कॉम्बिनेशंस हो सकते हैं, वी सॉ दैट। सो अ पेरेंट हैज equal number of chances of having a girl, that means 50% chances of a girl and 50% chances of having a boy, ठीक है। so ऐसे ही Mendelian laws work, and this sex determination भी you can say Mendelian law of inheritance पे ही चल रहा है, right? so this is one example. So now let's get to what we have to read today, that is single factor inheritance, जिसको हम Mendelian inheritance भी बोलते हैं। So single factor inheritance is also known as Mendelian inheritance because it works on Mendel's principles. Which Mendel's principles? The ones that we studied yesterday and day before yesterday, right? So basically it refers to the traits which are controlled by single genes, ठीक है, single genes with two alleles, ठीक है, one of which may be completely dominant over the other. That means जो हमने recessive और dominant का पढ़ा था, for example जो pea plant में पढ़ा था, tall और dwarf के, when we fertilize the tall and dwarf, what we saw, tall was dominant over the dwarf plant. When we crossbred yellow and green, because yellow was the dominant, so the filial one generation we got yellow plants. So that means single factor inheritance में क्या होता है, it's very simple, let me tell you, it is very simple, there is no different point. अभी हमने बोला, we were talking, and जब हम 9.1 भी कर रहे थे, we were talking that there is nature versus nurture का concept, right? What is nature versus nurture? Nature versus nurture basically talks about that yeah, so nature क्या होता है, I don't know what is wrong with this, just wait a second, yeah. So nature हो गया what we get from the genes or the genetic component, right? And nurture हो गया your environmental component, right? So these are the two things that affect any trait, or to have to be more precise, because I have now told you the phenotype. What is the phenotype? Phenotype is your traits, that physical traits, you know. There were two words, we had talked about it, genotype and phenotype, ठीक है। Genotypes are your genes and phenotype is what they express, ठीक है। So a tall parent and a short parent will have a for example, if they have a tall child, this was a pure tall, for example this was pure short, but they are having a tall child, ठीक है। So इसका phenotype क्या है, tall, but genotype may be different from the parent, तो ये TT हो सकता है, right? और ये T, एक सेकेंड गाइस, आई डोंट नो, या ये ऐसा TOT हो सकता है। तो जीनोटाइप इज डिफरेंट, फादर का जीनोटाइप ऐसा है, बेटे का जीनोटाइप ऐसा है, ठीक है। सो जीनोटाइप में फर्क है, बट फिनोटाइप सिमिलर, राइट? सो दिस इज व्हाट द जीनोटाइप एंड फिनोटाइप इज. सो नेचर वर्सेस नर्चर में वी वर रीडिंग अबाउट द phenotypic traits, that means that are visible, that we can see. So on a phenotype there is a genetic component, there is an environmental component, and single factor inheritance abhi tak it doesn't talk about nurture ka concept, because Mendel did the study where these things, these ideas were not that you can say developed, ठीक है ना. He was the first person who had started to talk about the genetics, right? उसके time पे तो he was not even calling it genes, he was calling it factors, right? So that is why you know, it is single factor inheritance, because he thought it was factors, and उसने, he was only thinking about some inherent things which you know passed on from ancestors to its next generations, right? So single factor inheritance क्या बोलता है? There is one gene, that means there is one genotype, ठीक है. जैसे मैंने 3 genotypes बना दिए, ठीक है. Each genotype gives rise to one phenotypic trait, ठीक है, ठीक है. So ये this genotype gives rise to this phenotype, this genotype gives rise to this phenotype. So basically what it is saying, it is saying one gene is responsible for one physical trait in our body, ठीक है. So this is what single factor inheritance talks about. So now let's read what it says. So refers to inheritance of traits controlled by single gene, right? With two alleles, obviously two alleles, one from mother, father, two alleles obviously. One which may be completely dominant over the other. So basically whatever we were reading in the Mendelian laws, similar points, okay? So trait controlled by genes on the sex chromosome are called sex linked traits. Obviously जो आपके मैंने बताया ना आपको ऑटोजोमल ट्रेट्स मोर और लेस गेट इनहेरिटेड सिमिलरली, सो देयर इज नॉट मच ऑफ अ थिंग देयर. मेंडेलियन ट्रेट्स जो होते हैं वो बेसिकली सेक्स लिंक्ड होते हैं एंड दैट इज व्हाई दे पास ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट जनरेशन and that is why we study about them, because how they pass on to the next generation is a thing which we study. And in X and Y chromosome you see X chromosome is longer than the Y chromosome, so majority of the genes in inherited also are taken from the X chromosome. So in ज़्यादा genes जो होते हैं ना वो X chromosome पे होते हैं क्योंकि X chromosome bigger होता है Y chromosome से, ठीक है. सो एक्स क्रोमोजोम ज्यादा ट्रेट्स जो होते हैं ना इन एवरी ह्यूमन बीइंग इज एक्स लिंक ट्रेट्स, ठीक है. ये पॉइंट भी समझ आ गया होगा, राइट. देन सिंगल जीन एक्स लिंक ट्रेट हैव अ डिफरेंट पैटर्न ऑफ इनहेरिटेंस, ठीक है. सो इसका इनहेरिटेंस ऑटोजोमल से डिफरेंट होता है एंड दैट इज वाई फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ आई हैव टू टेल यू सम एग्जाम्पल, आई विल टेल यू द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ रेड ग्रीन ब्लाइंडनेस, ठीक है. जो रेड ग्रीन ब्लाइंडनेस होती है ना, सम पीपल कैन नॉट डिफ्रेंशिएट बिटवीन रेड एंड ग्रीन और दे आर नॉट एबल टू सी द कलर्स रेड एंड ग्रीन प्रॉपरली. दिस इज अ एक्स लिंक्ड ट्रेट. नाउ व्हाट एक्स लिंक्ड यू कैन से डिसऑर्डर. नाउ व्हाट हैपन्स आई विल टेल यू. बेसिकली फॉर एग्जाम्पल हम लेते हैं, देयर इज अ फादर, देयर इज अ मदर एंड मदर इज अफेक्टेड, ठीक है. मदर अफेक्टेड है, ठीक है. सो व्हाट हैपन्स इफ दे हैव वन चाइल्ड, ठीक है. दे हैव, एग्जाम्पल दे रही हूँ, वही 50-50 वाला एग्जाम्पल ले लेते हैं, ठीक है. दे कैन बी इधर XX एंड देयर कैन बी XY एंड XY, ठीक है. सो व्हाट आर द चांसेस ऑफ डेवलपिंग अ डिजीज. Boys will develop the disease because they have got only one X from the mother and that X is affected, ठीक है. Whereas in the case of females they might not have it because they are getting one healthy X from the father and one affected X from the mother. So in case में ये carrier हो सकते हैं या ये affected भी हो सकते हैं, but most cases में it neutralize भी हो सकता है effect. But the son will always get affected because it is going to have only one X chromosome, that too from the mother and that too from the affected mother, ठीक है. that is why जो red green blindness होती है वो if there is any X linked disease, ठीक है, and if mother has that disease, that is going to come in the child, the son, basically because son only get one X and that is from the mother itself, right. So I hope you have understood this point, right. So iska example I have shown you. An example of a recessive X-linked trait is red green color blindness, ठीक है. So people who have this, they cannot distinguish between the color red and green, and I have shown you. जैसे the father is unaffected, ठीक है, the mother is a carrier मतलब she has, because XX है, ठीक है, she is XX, so maybe one X is it is affected, one X is normal, and because this trait is recessive, मतलब ये trait recessive है in the sense कि it will not show itself, ठीक है, until and unless it is present in both the chromosomes, it is not going to express itself. तो अब देखो इनके combination क्या होंगे. they'll have 4 children, they can have 4 children, 50% girls 50% boys, right. तो देखो इसमें क्या हुआ, जो एक X इनका फादर तो नॉर्मल है, मदर का एक X जो है वो नॉर्मल है, एक X अफेक्टेड वाला है. तो अब देखो एक बेटी को जिसको ये वाला X मिला और फादर का अनअफेक्टेड मिला, वो अनअफेक्टेड डॉटर हो गई, ठीक है. जिसको अफेक्टेड वाला एक X मिला और अनअफेक्टेड फादर से मिला, वो कैरियर बन जाएगी लाइक द मदर, ठीक है. जिसको नॉर्मल एक्स मिला और फादर से भी नॉर्मल वाई मिला, वो तो सन को कुछ नहीं होगा, और एक अफेक्टेड सन हो जाएगा और एक अनअफेक्टेड सन हो जाएगा. लेट मी show it to you with, I am sure that you did not understand this. I will again show it to you with different colors. Okay, let's say that the father is unaffected, so he has normal x and normal y. मदर का एक नॉर्मल एक्स है, एक अफेक्टेड एक्स है. ठीक है, अब ये कलर से पता लग गया ये अफेक्टेड है. तो मदर का बेसिकली, क्योंकि रेड ग्रीन ब्लाइंडनेस में इट इज रिसेसिव ट्रेट, दैट मीन्स इफ इट इज ओनली गोइंग टू बी देयर प्रेजेंट इन बोथ, ओनली देन इट इज गोइंग टू शो द ट्रेट, अदरवाइज रिसेसिव रहेगा. दैट मीन्स डोमिनेंट ट्रेट नहीं है. अगर ये पी प्लांट के टी टॉल के जितना डोमिनेंट होता, तो इवन इन ऐसे में भी वो अपने आप को फिनोटिपिक टाइप में भी एक्सप्रेस करता. इट वुड हैव एक्सप्रेस्ड इटसेल्फ इवन इफ इट वाज लाइक दिस और दिस, बिकॉज T was this T was the dominant one. ठीक है, so even in the heterogeneous mix it shows itself, but it is a recessive trait in this case. The X is the red green blindness, इसमें it is a recessive trait. That is why if it is present in both, only then it is going to show itself, otherwise it is not going to show itself. So what happens is, now let me draw the possibilities of their children. ये पहली डॉटर हो गई, शी गॉट बोथ द हेल्दी एक्स, शी बिकेम द अनअफेक्टेड डॉटर. ठीक है, क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली इन एनी केस 50% बॉयज होंगे, 50% गर्ल्स होंगी. अनअफेक्टेड डॉटर हो गई. सेकेंड डॉटर कैरियर हो गई, जस्ट लाइक द मदर. सेकेंड डॉटर बिकेम सिमिलर लाइक द मदर. ठीक है, सेम, नो डिफरेंट. फिर आ गया फर्स्ट सन, अनअफेक्टेड बिकॉज ही हैज हेल्दी एक्स फ्रॉम द मदर एंड वाई फ्रॉम द फादर. द नेक्स्ट बॉय, द सन, इज अ अफेक्टेड सन because he got only one x and that too affected one. ठीक है, so it is going to show itself. तो बेटा अफेक्ट हो जाएगा, बिकॉज इस केस में व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, शी हैज टू एक्सेस, सो वन इज न्यूट्रलाइजिंग द इफेक्ट ऑफ द अदर, सो दैट इज व्हाई शी इज बिकमिंग अ कैरियर चाइल्ड. दैट मीन्स हर चिल्ड्रन सिमिलरली लाइक हर मदर कैन हैव द पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ हैविंग similar combination of children. That means one unaffected daughter, one carrier daughter, one unaffected son, one affected son. ठीक है, so now I hope you have understood why this guy become affected, because he has only one x and that too from the mother and that too the affected one. So there is no other x to neutralize it. उसके पास एक ही x है, वो भी affected x है. So that is why he is having the disease. So I hope you have understood the single factor inheritance. So some other traits which follow the similar Mendelian characteristics are the Huntingtons disease. This is a, you can say, a mental disorder. So it is also one of the you know, Mendelian, it follows the Mendelian patterns. And then wet versus dry earwax. Some people have dry earwax and some have wet earwax. So it depends upon the kind of earwax that your parents have and which one is the dominant one. ठीक है, so this follows the Mendelian pattern. So I hope you have understood what is single factor inheritance. That means there is one gene which affects one phenotypic trait, and whosoever from father or mother is the dominant one, it is going to express itself in the next generation. So I hope you have understood. Now comes the polygenic inheritance. Now what is polygenic inheritance? You can also call it as quantitative inheritance, because in a single factor what was happening, one gene giving rise to one trait, whosoever was dominant was expressing itself. But in quantitative inheritance the difference is that not one gene puts or shows one phenotypic trait in the person. It is additive, many genes, it is the role of many genes that create one phenotype in a human. For example, I say intelligence. Intelligence एक ऐसा trait है which is not dependent on a single gene. So you can say multiple genes affect and gives rise to the intellect of a human. ठीक है? So intelligence is a polygenetic trait. ठीक है, whereas what sex your child is going to have, you can say it's a Mendelian trait. So I hope you're understanding the difference. So इसको multiple gene inheritance भी बोल सकते हैं, because not a single gene causes one phenotypic trait in the human. So effect of single gene is too small in this case, so it is difficult to detect कि which gene is causing the phenotypic trait, and it is more genes additively causing a phenotypic trait in a human being. ठीक है, so multiple gene produce equal effect and has a cumulative or additive effect. So that is called as a polygenetic inheritance. It is a quantitative trait because बहुत सारे quantity of genes are leading to one phenotypic trait. So that is why it is called quantitative inheritance also. Now examples are the color, human का skin color. ठीक है, how, which skin color we are going to have, it's a polygenetic trait. What eye color we are going to have, it's a polygenetic trait. What hair color we are going to have, it's a polygenetic trait. ठीक है, then इसके अलावा for example मैंने इधर example दिया हुआ है of skin pigmentation. What happens is that basically there are 60 loci which contribute to a single trait. That means what color we are going to have. ठीक है, it not only depends upon one trait, but there are different genes that are responsible for the kind of color that we are going to have. ठीक है, which are placed at different loci. ठीक है, so if we draw a chart, for example, there we have taken an example that there are three traits, okay, which are causing this inheritance. So we can draw a chart like that, and based on that we can see that how many different shades of skin color can be formed on a graph only based on the recombination. So independent assortment wala you can say, because every character or every additive gene is going to independently assort itself. ठीक है, and then there are going to be multiple arrangements or multiple recombinations of it. So thereby polygenetic inheritance में क्या होता है, there are many genes that additively cause a phenotype. In this case we have taken the example of the skin color. Skin color is not dependent upon a single gene but multiple different genes or loci. ठीक है, different loci contribute the body color. ठीक है, so that is how polygenetic inheritance works. Height, similarly height is also one of those characteristics which has, you can say, 400 genes are responsible. हमारी height, what height we are going to attain, it depends upon 400 different kind of genes, right? So it is also it's a polygenetic trait. And gene trait में there is one more thing which you need to understand, which is called the norm of reaction. Now let me tell you what norm of reaction is. For example, if I told you that there could be, because I told you that for example A, B, C, this is the combination from the father and this is the combination from the mother. So इसके base पे there are going to be, हमने ले लिया ना कि there are 3 genes or 3 locus that is causing a trait in the child. So based on this 64 different combinations can be made, right? जैसे I showed you in this picture, in this diagram. Wait, where is that diagram? Yes. So we took that, let us suppose that ABC, let me change the color, that ABC in father and ABC, the similar traits in mother, are causing a trait in the child. So इसके कितने combination हो सकते हैं? इसके 64 combinations हो सकते हैं which are listed here. ठीक है? So if I draw a diagram of this chart और इसका मैं अगर एक standard deviation लेती हूँ, so what happens is that, for example, if I draw a standard deviation, so that means there can be different people in 64 combinations. Just wait guys, I don't know what is happening to this. There will be 64 different combinations that can be present within this. ठीक है? So one child could attain this place, some could attain this place, this place, this place, this place, any place within these 64 combinations. So that is the probability or the range in which those are going to play. What your child is going to achieve, okay, it is under this whole range of combinations, right? And this is called the norm of reaction. What is this norm of reaction? That means because we have these many options, these many things that from these two parents, and these combinations are going to be made, and these are the different combinations in which your child can be there, right? So this is called the norm of reaction, and this norm of reaction expresses itself in the environment. For example, if I say because I can attain a color from being very dark black to being very white, okay? But what is the chance of a child in Africa getting very white? थोड़ा सा कम होगा, because the environment is little tropical, ठीक है? So melanin production in the body ultimately increases. So that means on polygenic inheritance, even environment has a role to play. You understand the point? What am I saying? How the gene is going to express itself is not outside the purview of the environment. So you have that range which is called the norm of reaction. That genotype has a variety of range, okay, which it can express, but expression ultimately is going to happen in the environment, and that will ultimately determine how the genotype it is going to express itself, okay? So polygenetic inheritance में there is a environmental role that is there, okay, and that determines how your genes are ultimately going to express itself. So I hope you've understood this topic. One more thing is left in this, and that is multi-factor inheritance. I thought I will complete it here today, but the problem is, guys, that the screen is not working properly today. So let me cover it tomorrow, because then I have to cover it with the polygenetic inheritance also, because polygenetic inheritance is basically only when addition of genes, many genes are leading to one phenotypic trait. But multi-factor inheritance mein na, there is a greater role of environment. So what is that, I am going to tell you tomorrow. And till then, guys, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.